Hey, going to be talking about a new primitive today that technically is not public until tomorrow morning, so a bunch of news will go out around it tomorrow. But AltLayer has been like a design partner throughout one of the builders launching and have been working with us. So I thought we would just talk about it now ahead of time. So a little bit of little bit of alpha. What is LayerZero? I think is like the one question is like, what is the existing protocol? Why does it matter? Originally, LayerZero, like we had zero intention to build a company. This was me and my two co-founders who were my college roommates. We'd been building stuff together for a really long time, and we were just messing around building stuff within the Ethereum ecosystem. Everything from our bots to everything on chain basically. And one day something pretty unique happened in that Binance Smart Chain launched. And prior to that there had been a bunch of chains, but not a lot of usage on any of these chains. But Binance Smart Chain, it was like every day you were hearing like more volume than Ethereum, more users than Ethereum. This was very interesting. But there was also this meme about the Binance validator set, which was this CAPTCHA 3x3 grid, and all the 9 validators were just pictures of CZ. And so it was like, kind of different than the guarantees you were getting from Ethereum. And so we were kind of thinking like, what could you do if you have this environment that's just like extremely fast and extremely cheap, but you largely treat the end result as ephemeral and you roll that result back to some stable environment like Ethereum. So this is kind of like a roll up kind of before roll ups. And so we started building at the time just like kind of a really stupid like toy game. It's the way we think about the world when we build things is we usually build toy examples. There's a silly game where you would open packs of gladiators on BSC. They would fight to the death, and if you won 10 matches, you'd be freed from the arena, and you would mint a permanent NFT back to Ethereum. So, one in 10,000, a factor of 10,000, 1,024 transactions on BSC for every one back to Ethereum. And so that was like our first vision of like, okay, like how would you use this? How would you do something that's like high throughput, high execution there? And then once we were building this, we realized like there was actually no way when you had the resulting state in BSC and you wanted to trigger something back to Ethereum to do that without a central coordinator that just sat outside and triggered events on both chains. But we're like, that defeats the entire purpose. Why would you want this central coordinator? New bridges existed at the time. And so we're like, all right, like somebody solved this. We'll just like use a bridge to trigger this mint on the other chain, and looked at bridges. And bridges were just like horrifically terrifying at the time. And I think every bridge that existed then has gone on to get hacked. And so like we were directionally right in that like, wow, this stuff was really bad at that moment in time. And so then we actually started working a bridge. We said, all right, we'll build a better bridge. And we had this concept of native assets being better than wrapped assets, like all these things of why we were going to do that. While we were building this bridge, we realized we had the exact same problem. You still couldn't trigger events on both chains. And that's when we kind of realized that this was a generalizable problem to solve. So fast forward kind of 3.5 to 4 years now from then, LayerZero has been live for 2.5 years. Almost going to hit 100 blockchains today. I know it's 85 up there, but we're at 98 as of today. 140 plus million messages, tens of billions of dollars of assets secured, tens of billions of dollars transferred annually. It's turned into something like very interesting, being used at scale by a lot of different assets. And so that's been like really cool. It's, again, this started as a toy project for us for the most part. And it's been really amazing to see that like used in production. But there's a couple of messaging flows right now that are really tricky and kind of prohibitive for devs. So you can think about, again, early on when we launched, there were really only like 7 chains that mattered at the time. And this was like Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Avalanche, Optimism, Arbitrum, Phantom at the time, Solana. So there were really only like a couple. It was just a really narrow view. Now we're at, again, 98 chains and like rapidly expanding. Roll-ups are proliferating at like this unbelievable rate. And so you can think about if you're on a long tail roll-up, so you roll any of these new chains, You might not have high fidelity Oracle. You might not have price feeds. You typically want to access state from the Ethereum layer 1, and that's very expensive to do, whether you're an alt L1, whether you're a rollup, whatever it is. And so that problem itself right now in messaging is, you can think you're on a chain that costs 1 cent. If I want to go see like who owns this Bored Ape on Ethereum, I'm going to pay 1 cent on my chain. I'm going to wait some latency for finality there. I'm going to write a transaction on Ethereum, which is like, call it 15 bucks, grab the state, write another transaction, which is another 15 bucks, and then bring the result back. And that's another like 3 minutes and 15 seconds of latency out. So I'm getting 5-minute stale data. I've paid like $30 to effectively read. And this is just like super prohibitive for actually building useful things. So LayerZero Read, again, launching tomorrow morning or rolling out with announcements tomorrow morning, is the ability to read any state on any chain over any period of time. Really interesting primitive when you think about it. So not only can you query any individual state. So state, again, might be something simple. It might be ID and auth. It might be ownership of an asset. But it also might be what is the current price feed of this asset on the chain? What is the current ETH USDC price in the Uni V3 pool on Ethereum? What is the price of an exotic asset aggregated across a bunch of different chains? Or more importantly, like what is a TWAP of those things, right? You can construct a TWAP on the fly now. So any state across any chain over any period of time. And the period of time, again, opens up a lot of really interesting doors, like rewards retroactively based on ownership over a snapshot, over like a period of time. Lots of things that you can do with that. And then the other thing that you can do here that's really powerful is basically the ability to map and reduce. And so it's the ability to take, again, an exotic asset would be like a good example. If you want the ETH USDC price, you might just read what is the Oracle price feed on Ethereum right now at this moment in time, or what is the TWAP of the Uni V3 pool. But if you want like an exotic asset and you're worried about manipulation in like a single given market within a single block, you can get price or TWAP of that asset across multiple exchanges on multiple chains at the same time and then consolidate that information. Allows you to build much more stateful applications. So you can think about applications that have rate limiting, applications that have resource locking, which is like there's tons of standards right now rolling out from a lot of different orgs on resource locking and to know whether something has been filled on the other side, whether the resource still sits in the lock and is retrievable, all of these different things. So a lot of cool things that you can do with this. And it basically allows you now that same thing that I described. It was like $30 in 5 minutes, and you're getting only data from the sort of tip at that moment in time. Now you can do from that long tail chain, basically for if it costs a penny, you're talking 1 cent next block. And over some period of time, right? Which is like hugely powerful for the expressiveness of what you can build within an application. So super exciting about what that actually is going to unlock for developers. My individual view has always been that historically, like value transfer has just been the only thing that everybody thinks about messaging protocols as a bridge anyways. Like that's just how the market views it. When we first started looking, everything was a bridge. And our like unique insight at the time was like, transfer of value is just a special case of generic messaging, like solve for generic messaging, solve for the packet. And eventually we think data and actual state is going to far eclipse like pure messaging transfers. Hasn't really played out over the last couple of years. It's been of the 135 million messages, probably about 80% are value transfer. So like almost everything is that, but we're super excited to build primitives like this that allow applications to become more complex, to express state or hold state across multiple environments, to start to build things that are more like microservices like we build today, leverage chains for like their orthogonal trade-offs. You can think about like a DA layer or an Arweave holding all of your storage, some really high throughput computation layer, whether this is Lana, whether this is Mega ETH, whatever it is, and then being able to roll result out or propagate result across multiple instances. Most applications that get built today are basically completely isolated. You look at Aave instances, you look at Uniswap instances, you look at SushiSwap instances. All of these are fully isolated, right? They're their own market on every chain. They don't share, aggregate data. Nothing about them sort of ties this into one cohesive application. So one use case, this is actually, like I said, being announced tomorrow. It's actually live. It's been live since the election because we had this cool use case pop up. So Wintermute built an election market. I know Polymarket sort of was the news at the time, but Wintermute built this permissionless election market, which we thought was really cool. And then Chaos Labs built Edge. And so one of the sort of complaints about Polymarket market is the way that this resolution happens. Basically, a set of token holders are voting via UMA. I think it's like $300 million of economic security to resolve like $1 billion market. There's like potential issues with that. And so the Chaos team built this ability to create an ad hoc oracle on any data by basically making a quorum of LLMs. So you can say Grok and GPT-4o and Claude and all of this stuff. And then you define the news sources. So I think for this particular market, it was Associated Press, CNN, and ABC. And then the LLMs create a quorum. That gets written to chain, and then basically LayerZero read was used to read the result of that. So they just write it in one place, and then you can read and resolve the election market through every other chain. And so that was really cool to see rolled out into production, and has been, it was super fun working on them with it. We have a big lineup of day one builders who are going to be building with this come tomorrow. All of that will be announced tomorrow. Obviously, AltLayer being one of them. So again, super excited to do it. But that's what we're here to introduce is LayerZero Read. I think we have. I talk fast, so I usually run short on presentations. We can just like if anybody has questions, we can do some quick Q&A real quick. Yeah.
You mentioned about like the environment part, Bryan, and how do you see if we can make it like environment, like a privacy environment for, cross-chain, whatever? Because at first I was thinking about maybe that could be like one scenario with like privacy scenario or something, but as soon as you mentioned about like you make it like the environment with all the kind of chains, that makes it like perfect environment part.
Yeah, privacy is inherently tricky for like a couple of reasons. Most of the way that this has been introduced in the past is basically you have a completely private environment, take Aztec or something similar, and you're going to move assets into that almost like a tornado cache or something like that. You're going to move it in this private environment. Everything within that environment will stay private, and then eventually you can leave, right? And so this limits things. Like you really only know inputs and outputs to that system. Now there's a couple other derivatives of this happening now about sort of privacy on demand, certain like semi-private networks where it's private but can be exposed to like regulation or government. There's like more and more maybe dystopian versions of this versus like pure privacy from the privacy sense. But like from the LayerZero side, LayerZero treats everything as an agnostic packet. It's literally meant to be like a packet on the internet. It's just arbitrary contract invocation with a bytes array. And so whatever that data looks like, however it's packed, whatever element of privacy is inherent, like can be inherent in just an array of bytes for being able to, again, encode and decode that in some way, you can do over LayerZero. So there's like no restrictions. It really is just moving bytes. So privacy that whether it's a ZK, whether it's something else, fully compatible with LayerZero itself. But for a private chain, again, it's just the ability to read or invoke with a set of bytes. So you really anything that you can build there, you can export.
Sure, because to connect with the maybe you mentioned about like election market part. One time, I mean, like Robert Venture guy, he like tweet about like a country they upload the ZK verified version of like citizens like ID. I was arguing like why not plus FHE so that like your haters won't like revenge on you things like that.
Yeah, I mean. ZK is one of the more interesting things in the entire space right now, but it's important. I think it gets misunderstood a lot, right? Like ZK is really good for two things. It's really good for compression, and it's really good for privacy, right? Like those are the two things. And so like kind of the early ZK claims were like Ethereum out was completely trustless, right? You would have the exact security of Ethereum. But then what we actually realized as we look into it is you have an attestation, but you have no ability to slash. There's no economic security tied to this at all, right? So what you can do is the same validators can create a malicious block, create a snark of the block, present the snark. It will be valid, canonical, completely accepted, but they throw away the block, and they can never get slashed on that block itself because the block has never been seen by anybody outside of this like cabal of validators who have produced this. The snark itself is completely valid and canonical, but it is different than what is the canonical state of Ethereum chain. Now this is for like pure messaging side of things. Now eventually, so what you get is compression. What you get is a bunch of signatures who are all signing off, but you still don't have the underlying economic security tied to it. If you eventually on Ethereum you can slash a snark, then that fixes this. On the privacy side, when you're talking about like ID and other things, like you have an attestation, but common sort of trope or example is like, you'll go into you'll be able to prove some element about something that you own. So you can think about walking into a liquor store and you can show that you're old enough without showing your address and presenting your ID and giving all of these things.
Yeah, I understand.
But it still is reliant on like you having ownership of the wallet, right? Like my kid shouldn't be able to go into the liquor store and be like, hey, look, the attestation doesn't say anything about the owner. Like WorldCoin and some things, again, solve this by tying them together. But I think there's like a little bit of a misunderstanding about what it actually does. But can you take a snark of anything and like present it across environments? Like, yes, of course. I think this is actually what's exciting about ID and auth itself is having a layer or environment where you do have identity and authentication and being able to use that auth that's been proven into any other environment or across any other application once we get, again, more stateful applications.
Yeah, thank you. We can do the further talk after you.
Yeah, sounds great.
More question? How your token was used with the case of elections?
The protocol or the token?
Your token.
The token it's the protocol, right? So right now, the ZRO token is effectively constrains one thing. There's a referendum every 6 months. The referendum is to turn on the fee switch within the underlying protocol. And that's basically like, that's what it is. Eventually there'll be a bunch of other, we've sort of talked about broad other things, but the token itself, like the protocol has been live for 2 years before the token itself. So the token is the ability to turn on the fee switch. It's a referendum that's on chain, actually uses read. It uses read in order to do that. So you can vote and turn on your support of fee switch, and that happened. So the protocol itself was used for read, to read the state. The token is not used in this given example.
Okay, and there are not much plans to use token other than governance case, right?
No, there's...
So if I want to volunteer and help you with governance, I need this token, right? And I pay for opportunity to help the community, right?
Yeah, the underlying fee switch in the protocol is constrained by two. The fee switch turns on, and basically every message that ever gets sent across the protocol has embedded fee in ZRO token, right? So that's like the underlying of the protocol itself.
There could be implemented fees in
it already
LayerZero
exists
token.
in code. It is there. It's embedded within there. The question is just, is it turned on or is it not turned on? There's a couple constraints around it. One of the constraints is at the maximum amount of the fee, because if you can control the fee switch, if I can set the fee to unlimited, basically infinite, then I can DOS every application on the protocol, right? So you have to be able to add constraints to keep the protocol censorship resistant. And in our case, what we do is the constraint of the fee is the constraint of the total amount that all of the verifiers and all of the executors charge for fee. So the most the protocol can charge is up to 100% of that. So if you ever want to run all of the infrastructure yourself, if you want to self-verify, if you want to self-execute, if you want to self-do that, you can always keep the fee at 0. We have no ability to censor, but otherwise the fee basically matches or can match up to the amount of the aggregate fee of the verifiers and executors.
Yeah, and when do you think, what will be the decision point to switch fees on?
December 19th, first referendum. Vote yes.
December 19th?
December 19th, yeah.
So it already happened?
December.
Okay, sorry. this December, okay.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Woo! Thank you.